Hello, it's nice to meet you again. So far, I have uploaded about 12 videos over the past 2 months. Some people might wonder, what is this person trying to say? Some might think, why does he keep repeating the same thing? There doesn't seem to be much substantial content, and I think there are people who feel this way. Nevertheless, the reason I have spent so much time repeating similar things is that I believe it is like laying the foundation of a house. So today, I would like to show you the blueprint of the happy house that will be built on the foundation I have talked about so far. It can be said to be the vision we are looking at and also the map of where and how we should go. The appearance of that house is as follows. This house consists of 3 foundations, 5 principles, and 5 components. In other words, it is a house made up of 3 pillars forming the foundation, 5 principles or directions of education, nurturing or support, and 5 elements that make up the interior of the house. First, to briefly summarize the foundational pillars I mentioned earlier, the first is the perspective of parents towards their children with disabilities, which is to healthily acknowledge their child's disability. This was discussed in episodes 1 to 6 of the BoTV videos. This is extremely important. Secondly, the mindset towards your child should be not to find their disability too burdensome or feel unhappy about it, because that is exactly what children with disabilities hope for. And also, parents should live their own lives. It's just that living with the fact that their child has a disability is different. You should not exhaust all your energy by being overly focused on treatment. For both yourself and your child, you must always pay attention to your mental and physical health as a parent. In my case, I have mentioned that spiritual health aids mental health, and having mental relaxation prevents physical overexertion. Wouldn't it be better to aim for both you and I to live well, rather than sacrificing myself completely? This topic is covered in the 7th episode of the BoTV video. To achieve this, we need to build the house of a happy life that we are discussing today. The third foundation concerns attitude, emphasizing that it is a marathon, not a sprint. No, rather than describing it as a race, I would like to express it as a life of walking together on a path or a slightly inclined hill. I am talking about a path where you slowly enjoy the surroundings with your family, sometimes climbing a difficult uphill, taking a break when it gets tough, then walking again, sometimes encountering a long flat area, and sometimes a downhill. It is about a happy hiking trail with your family. Our children learn very slowly. Therefore, it is important to take a long time, proceed slowly and persistently, and not give up. However, at the same time, it is crucial to provide a bit of a challenge without making it too easy, while always checking if the child is struggling too much and maintaining the right level and balance. Now, I will talk about the pillars that form the foundation of the house. In other words, these are the 5 directions or principles for the education, upbringing, and support of children. The content related to this is covered in episodes 8 to 12 of the BoTV series. To summarize and organize this again, it is as follows. The first is loving and attentive observation. Scolding or punishing may seem effective for a moment, but it is not helpful in the long run. One thing I would like to recommend here is to periodically record your child's condition or situation. By keeping records, you can identify improvements and things that remain unchanged. Based on that, keep asking why and what the solution is. It's about continuously pondering, asking, and answering. When you keep a certain keyword in mind and stay interested, you'll notice many related things in newspaper articles and various places. Sometimes you find good tips in unexpected places. I think many inventions were possible because inventors had such habits. I would like to say that if we want to find creative solutions, attentive observation is essential. And if we record this well and keep looking around, the likelihood of coming up with good solutions greatly increases. The second pillar is that it should provide fun and happiness rather than treatment or training. When I look back at the so-called treatment for my child and the treatment for other children, I hesitate to say this, but I felt it was somewhat like dog training. It's like giving a reward if they listen well and punishing them if they don't. Personally, I don't think this approach is desirable. If our children can somewhat understand the situation and grasp the meaning of rewards and punishments, I might understand, but training young children who can't grasp the situation, don't find it fun, and even struggle, such a way is not desirable in my opinion. This situation seems to occur mainly when entrusted to professionals. I believe it's better to make it fun, provide happiness, give opportunities, offer praise, and build confidence. I have even mentioned that you can use objects of obsession to educate your children. In the case of my child, it was difficult to teach through words or writing when they were young. In other words, you could say they were more familiar with machine than with people. So it was very difficult for teachers or parents to teach them Korean or English. However, since our child liked computer games, we bought them educational game CDs. In fact, we received them for free from a foundation called Paradise, which was very helpful. Our child found them very enjoyable and played those games a lot, which greatly helped in learning Korean and English. Also, our child was very obsessed with things like butterflies, tunnels, and high-speed trains around the world. So we bought them a butterfly guidebook and a book about high-speed trains around the world. Our child found these books very interesting and almost memorized them. This was because they had such a good memory. They also knew the names of all the tunnels. So when we traveled, our child would tell us which tunnel was coming up next, and it was fun to see them get it right. For us, traveling meant going to a place and having fun, but for our child, the fun part of the trip was actually passing through the tunnels. As they grew up, our family once traveled to Europe together, and at that time, we made riding Europe's high-speed trains the theme of our trip. The third point is that it should be relationship-oriented. It would be ideal to have both cognition and social skills, but if you have to focus on one, which should it be? If asked, I believe it should be centered on relationships and social skills. I think it is better to focus on social skills centered around group activities rather than one-on-one therapy. Here, I would like to mention that among children, there are those who have no issues with communication but have difficulty making friends, which leads them to refuse meeting friends and even strongly dislike meeting people. I find this situation to be even more challenging because even when parents try to offer support, they refuse by saying they prefer being alone and don't need any help. They have their own thoughts. Of course, it would be great if this child could get a job on their own, pursue their hobbies, and live their life in their own way, but it becomes problematic when they do nothing and just stay at home. Of course, since this is a life they have chosen for themselves, no one can really say anything about it. However, from the parents' perspective, they think it would be desirable for their child to form relationships with others and engage socially, which is why this situation becomes difficult. I also don't really have any clever solutions for this situation. However, one thing I wanted to mention while discussing this is that if your child has difficulty making friends from a very young age, since communication is possible, you should pay more attention. Always be interested in whether they are struggling emotionally. Engage in conversation, offer comfort, and observe them carefully. In many cases, since there are no communication issues with the child, people just assume it's their personality and move on. But when they become adults and prefer to be alone, it becomes very difficult for them. Also, even if people around them want to suggest getting an autism diagnosis, after observing such situations in childhood, it's a very sensitive topic, so they find it hard to bring it up. As I have repeatedly mentioned in previous videos, the important thing is not whether it's autism or not, but rather what kind of help the child needs or doesn't need. I believe this is the approach we should take. Therefore, we need to observe them closely from a young age, and if necessary, I think we should seek help from professionals. This is because communication is possible. If a professional prescribes medication, I think it's not a bad idea to also receive help from medication. The fourth pillar is prioritization. Since we cannot do everything all at once, we are also constrained by time. Therefore, we inevitably have to set priorities and handle tasks accordingly. I will explain in more detail later, but today I would like to briefly introduce the concept of a priority matrix. This chart consists of 3 axes: feasibility, likeness, and concerns, which in Korean translate to whether something is possible, whether it is liked or disliked, and how much concern it raises. Based on these 3 axes, you fill in the necessary items in this chart and decide which ones to prioritize. By using this chart, it helps organize the thoughts that were swirling in your mind, which is why I created this format, as I find it helpful. One of the reasons for setting priorities is because I believe it helps parents execute what is necessary without getting exhausted and while maintaining composure. This is because tasks become organized. Additionally, when setting priorities, you should also consider the needs of not only the children, but also the parents and the family. This is because while something may be necessary for the child, it should not reach a point where it disrupts the family's life. Additionally, a helpful framework related to setting priorities is called the boundary circle. In other words, it involves organizing what falls within the acceptable boundaries and what is outside the boundaries that you think should definitely be improved. In the previous video, I mentioned that perhaps the boundaries for our children seem too narrow, and I suggested that while it's good to broaden the boundaries a bit, it's important to ensure that things that definitely need to be corrected beyond those boundaries are indeed addressed. So ultimately, I think the issue for parents will be how to set these boundaries. The fifth pillar is to ask for help, collaborate with other parents or the community, and utilize resources. It is very difficult to raise a child and manage all these tasks alone. Usually when everything is staked on a complete cure, people try to solve it on their own. If a complete cure is achieved, it can be considered a good solution because the child can navigate life independently. However, the problem is that this is still difficult to achieve. Even if there is some improvement, there will likely be quite a lot of support needed. During my seminars, I often say AOA as a kind of slogan. In other words, it stands for accepting, opening, asking. In previous videos, I spent a lot of time talking about accepting. Now, I will talk about opening and asking. Asking for help includes government support, community assistance, and help from other families with disabilities. To add one more thing, I would like to talk about participation. This means participating in gatherings of families with disabilities, volunteering when necessary, and working together to achieve goals. If you look closely, support from the government, community assistance, or help from gatherings of families with disabilities are all actually the result of the dedication and efforts of parents who already have children with disabilities. All the benefits you are receiving now are the result of the sweat and dedication of someone who walked this path before you. Nothing is obtained for free. I believe that each person's small participation and contribution eventually return as benefits for our children. Now I will talk about the 5 elements that make up a happy life within the home. This refers to relationships, contributions or jobs, and volunteering. Also home, then the respect for children's choices, and then financial stability. I further express this as financial dignity. I plan to explain each of these in detail in the future, one by one. To implement the 5 elements of a happy life mentioned here, you can't just do it. A plan is necessary because you can't execute without knowing what to do. I conduct 2 main workshops, one of which is called Walking Together in Life, where we plan for the future 5 to 10 years ahead. The other is a workshop called Happy Life, which involves planning and preparing so that children can lead stable and peaceful lives even after their parents have passed away. Each workshop is conducted in small groups of about 4 to 5 families, once a week for 2 hours over a period of 6 weeks. This workshop is about setting a future vision and planning how to execute that vision step by step. As parents age, planning and execution become difficult, so it's best to establish these plans as soon as possible. Planning is not something you do once and finish. It should be reviewed and updated periodically. Through such planning and execution, we are ultimately preparing for the happy independence of our children, which is what we ultimately desire. Planning and preparing for these things while parents are alive ensures that our children with disabilities can live safely and peacefully after the parents pass away. And when these preparations are made, parents can live with peace of mind. That's why our mission includes the happy life of the children and the peace of mind for the parents. For children without disabilities, independence is very natural, but it's a bit different for children with disabilities. In cases where it is difficult for them to live independently, an environment should be prepared so they can live with someone. For children who can live somewhat independently, they should live independently, but since they still need help, an environment should be prepared to provide necessary support from those around them. So I've tried to present a blueprint of a happy life for children with disabilities. Can you picture it, or does it still sound like a pie in the sky? Then, to help you envision a more practical picture, I will share with you a vision statement from my child's future plan. This plan is the vision statement from a 15-year plan I prepared in August 2012 when my child was in 10th grade and 16 years old after about 6 months of preparation. First, I'll briefly show it in English, and by looking at this vision, you can picture how my child spends their week. In bold letters, you can see aspects like career, home, family or friend relationships, and personal choices. To lead such a life, financial stability is naturally necessary. If you look at the sentences in English, the tense is in the perfect tense rather than the future tense. I wrote it this way because I consider it as something that has already been achieved. For privacy reasons, I have omitted my child's name here. My child's vision is as follows. My child walked with God in Jesus Christ and lived an independent and happy life with his wife and 2 children. On weekdays, he worked as a professional in a company in the animation field and spent joyful evenings at home with family and friends. On weekends, he attended church and spent a lot of time practicing with the church music team as a clarinet player. After Sunday service, he spent time with members of the church small group. During vacation periods, he went on mission trips with a mission team in Duncan for the indigenous people. And in his free time, he enjoyed badminton, tennis, running, fishing, swimming, kayaking, golf, skiing, snowboarding, and computer games with family and friends. Does it seem a bit more tangible now? Since your children are quite different from mine, you probably don't see much specificity regarding your own children yet, do you? How could one possibly know everything from just this one picture? It took me a lot of time to draw this depiction as well. And this vision was established in 2012, and since it's now 2023, there are many things that have been achieved, some that haven't, some that have changed, and some that will need to be changed in the future. In this way, it is something that continuously changes. However, since there is a basic plan, you only need to change the parts that require modification. The ultimate goal of an independent life does not change. Now, I will continue to discuss how to establish plans for the future, how to execute them, how to receive the necessary assistance for execution, and how to prepare for the unmet needs, among other things. Since each person's situation is different, I cannot provide a single answer for everyone, but I hope you can create and implement an action plan for your child's future plans and a happy life through the framework introduced here, thereby ensuring your child's happiness and peace of mind for your family. Today I have shown you the overall picture and vision. In the future, I plan to conduct this in a workshop format, similar to how I used to conduct workshops to discuss how to set up such future plans. Before that, in the next session, we will have a time to provide an overview of government support for individuals with developmental disabilities, focusing on the support from the BC provincial government in relation to the help requests mentioned in these 5 pillars. Knowing what government support is available is important. Information for establishing future plans. Thank you for watching so far. See you next time. Thank you.